Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's another episode of Off the Iron Podcast with the Goodwin boys. Adam.
And Evan.
Coming back at you with another episode, and this one will be jam-packed with info, reaction, recaps, as we now have a Stanley Cup champion. Congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning. We'll get into that. Yeah. We'll get into that a little bit later, but first, just a reminder that Off the Iron is brought to you by Rocky Mountain Barbecue Catering. Got an event coming up. Call the good folks at Rocky Mountain Barbecue Catering. Whether it be corporate, birthday, anniversary, or wedding, they can help provide a great tasting, professional, and mobile catering experience. Rocky Mountain Barbecue offers cook on-site events, hot delivery with service and setup, or just hot drop-off deliveries with all your barbecue favorites. Visit their web at www.rockymountainbarbecue.ca and request a free quote for your event. If catering is not your need, then come by their storefront, pick up a lunch combo for just $12 with 2 sides and a drink. Open 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on weekdays. Go visit them at 5303 68th Avenue Southeast, Calgary. As well, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media pages, or shoot us an email if you want us to discuss certain topics. We can be found on Facebook, Twitter at Off the Iron Pod, Instagram at Off the Iron Podcast. Our Gmail is offtheironpodcast@gmail.com, and our YouTube channel, which is up and running. This will be the 3rd upload onto our channel. It's brand new, so go check that out on YouTube. And if you prefer a visual stimulation, then
if you want to look at our ugly mugs the whole time.
Yeah. All right, so let's hear from Evan. What's been going on, Evan?
Not much. Just keeping it pretty low key. Still pretty busy at work, of course.
Mm-hmm.
The wee one is almost here. We're on baby watch in our house. So
when's the due date? October 20th.
October 20th. Yeah, I should say we're recording October 4th. At 10 o'clock in the morning, so it's a early Sunday morning. Adam's got to go to work later, so we had to squeeze this in this morning. But yeah, no, just taking it easy. I'm not going to get a lot of sleep here in a little bit, so I'm just trying to relax a little bit and get some more things done around the house. I was going to ask you, do you know what kind of wood they smoke with that Rocky Mountain Barbecue? I've been watching a bunch of barbecue shows on TV, and it's got me inspired.
It is all hickory wood chips.
All hickory wood chips. Okay.
All hickory,
just curious. I'm gonna mod one of our beer fridges in the garage that doesn't really have anything in it at the moment into a smoker. So I'm that's gonna be my baby project if I can ever get to it. But
see what happens. See what the little gal has in store for you.
Yeah, exactly. I've been watching a whole bunch of barbecue shows on Netflix, and I'm just like, man, I need to get out there and smoke something.
Very soothing.
Yeah, no, pretty low key here. Just kind of waiting. How about yourself?
Same. Just working. Just enjoying all the sports we're having on. I mean, if anyone knows me, I'm not just a hockey guy. I'm a sports junkie. I've been watching NFL, NBA Finals.
Blue Jays, wah wah.
Wow. I mean, they weren't expected to make the playoffs, but I was pretty excited when they did, and then it was over in a matter of about 26 hours. So by inning 2 of game 2, you just knew that they were done. So
yeah, what happened to Ryu there? He just kind of fell apart.
Yeah, you could just tell he was just missing his spots early in that first inning, and it's like, oh, this isn't going well.
Yeah,
not going to end well for the Blue Jays, but oh well. We're back. NFL is sort of the spotlight now, but an exciting.
So quick observation about the NFL. I know this is a hockey podcast, but it's kind of interesting how, you hear in the NHL about the parity in the league and how every team has a chance to win for the most part, minus a few teams in the NHL. They're getting there, but you all know who they are. But in the NFL, the parity between the teams is growing larger and larger. Like if you compare, for example, in week 2, San Francisco against the New York Jets. San Francisco had almost all of their starters out of the lineup, and they still thumped the Jets.
Yeah.
by like 30 points. So if you're a New York Jets fan, I feel you.
The Jets are so bad that they just played the Broncos, the 0-3 Broncos on Thursday Night Football, and they didn't have a lot of their starting players, and the Broncos still crushed the Jets.
Oh, man. Brutal.
So now the Broncos are 1-3, and the Jets are 0-4.
Chiefs look good again, though. Holy.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, so unfortunately we're getting robbed of one of the big matchups this weekend with the Pats and Chiefs. Cam Newton testing positive for COVID, so that one's.
Oh, it was Newton. I didn't know it was Newton.
Yeah, multiple other players, but that was the one name that got out. So Cam Newton tested positive for COVID, so don't think we're going to be seeing that matchup anytime soon. But anyway, we digress.
Yeah. So before we dive into the hockey talk here, I did also want to point out, repping the I Love Alberta Oil and Gas, or I Love Canadian Oil and Gas sweatshirt here. Just shout out to all those men and women out in the oil field trying to keep the lights on. We're heading into winter season here too, so appreciate everything you guys do. I know it's been, or guys and girls do. It's been a rough couple years for them, but hopefully everything turns around here soon. Just wanted to throw that in there.
And we always appreciate the oil and gas workers keeping us going, so that's good on you. I don't have one of those hoodies. Maybe I should pick one up.
Should.
Are they comfy?
Oh, yeah, they're super comfy. It's more about the message, though, than anything.
Which I usually focus on with my clothing, because I got the Chance the Rapper hat. I rep Nike a lot, so I got Nike, but I should rep some Canadian oil and gas.
There you go.
Or maybe get a bumper sticker. Who knows?
Something. Yeah. Spread the message, man.
Yes. All right.
All right. Well, with that, let's dive right in.
So we have a cup champion, the Tampa Bay Lightning. According to some Flame fans, have won their first legit cup.
I agree. First legitimate Stanley Cup. No, I'm kidding.
I'm so over that thing.
It was
there was a take on Twitter the other day. It's like a picture with a guy with like 1,000 swords around him at his neck, and it's like drop of Flames take that will get this sort of reaction. And my take was it wasn't in 04.
Oh, geez.
Of course,
Come on.
I just have a hard time believing with everything that we've learned about parallax angles and stuff like that. There's just no way they could have called that a goal. But that's my take. That's my 2 cents.
I still think it was in. I'm sticking with that, along with the rest of Calgary.
That doesn't mean I wish it wasn't in. I wish it was, and it was more definitive. But you can't go back and change the past. So Tampa Bay back on top of the hockey world.
Bulin.
Yeah, Happy Bulin, man. And Ruslan Fedotenko with 2 goals in Game 7.
Yeah,
Flame killer.
He could shove it. Just kidding.
But Tampa, I mean, basically just the better team the whole way through here. Very deserving. It was awesome to see Stamkos lift the cup, even though he played a very, very, very small role in terms of on-ice contribution. He played about 2.5 minutes throughout the whole 6-game series, or the whole playoffs, I should say. But, got on the score.
That was a cool moment, though.
Yeah, I mean, that was a beauty goal sniped at top corner.
Well, he's had the worst luck with injuries. He missed out on the Olympics because he broke his leg right before. Yeah. And then right before Tampa Bay had their run to the Eastern Conference Final, they didn't make it all the way to the Cup. I don't think. No, they didn't.
They did in 2015, but
he got injured and hardly played at all for that run too. Yeah. So he's just been bad luck after bad luck. So it was nice to see him actually get in there and contribute. I mean, the guy only had 5 shifts, but he scored. So at least he had an impact on the game, right? Whether it was the game-winning goal or not I'm not sure. I don't think it was.
But it was, and then I think Dallas scored a late goal in that game. Because I remember some tweets. I know, I think Elliot Friedman put out, he's like, thanks for ruining the storyline, Dallas.
Yeah, way to go.
But, yeah, it was good to see. And, they're just too deep, too good in all areas of their lineup. Goal, defense, forwards, just all around the better team. So, and it showed. I mean, Dallas had nothing left in Game 6. They had 8 shots about 5 minutes into the third period or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really deny that Tampa was by far the better team. To be honest, Dallas probably didn't deserve to get past Colorado either, or Vegas. Well, I mean they beat Vegas quite handily, so maybe Vegas, but yeah, it's just Tampa was by far the better team, right from the get go. That wasn't just like a one-off story where they only had 8 shots going into the third period. Every single game in the Stanley Cup Finals, they were being heavily outshot by the time they got to the third period. So you can only rely on that sort of game plan for so long. And what fell out, I keep wanting to say Happy Bulin, but Hudobin, the goaltending came back down to earth. He wasn't superhuman anymore, and there you go.
Yeah, and there just wasn't enough offensive depth on the Stars either in terms of high-end, scoring power, because Sagan it came out after that he was playing through 4 different injuries: groin, knee, shoulder, and hip, I believe. So when one of your top guys is not firing on all cylinders, it's hard to get the amount of scoring you need, and that was pretty much their downfall. I mean, 8 shots through 2.5 periods says it all. So disappointing for Dallas. It's probably the most crushing finals loss in history, I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, I mean, just with the circumstances, being away from your family for 2.5 months and getting that far, being so close, and winning it in overtime in Game 5 to stretch it out again and kind of getting the belief back that, oh, maybe we can do this, and then just getting crushed. They had no chance in Game 6. There was not even a chance, although I did predict Tampa in 6.
There you go.
So I got nailed the series, but yeah, but they didn't have a hope in hell in beating Tampa. There was no way it was going to happen. If I did it again. If Hudobin came back down to earth, they had no chance.
Yeah, and it was strange that it was Hudobin that was leading them to the finals. When the playoffs started, you would just assume that it would be Ben Bishop because he's been solid for them for so long, or since he's been in a Stars uniform, and it was Hudobin who carried them to the final, and just wasn't able to get the job done. But shout out to him for being put in a tough position when their number one goes down, and he more than performed admirably. So
probably played his way into some money coming in the off season here for somebody.
Yeah, who knows?
Somebody will pick him up again with that run for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, shout out to both teams for an entertaining Cup final. Dallas, I know it's a crushing loss, especially with being away from the family. You saw it in that Jamie Benn interview after Game 6. I don't know.
Oh man, that was brutal. Not brutal for the sake of what a bad interview, but man, you could just tell he was crushed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that's like, you get there for the first time, you come so close, and you don't know if you're going to be back again because, the NHL is so wild. I mean, they could be, St. Louis next year, go out in the first round. It's just that's how close the Western Conference is in terms of competition. So that's probably the best chance they'll ever have, and came up just a couple games short. But in the end, the best team won, so you can't really complain.
Yeah, I mean, what do you say about the Lightning? Finally. They've been one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NHL for the past 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, they've been to the Eastern Conference Final for the past 6 seasons. So,
and you kind of had a feeling it was destiny for them this year after being knocked out in 4 games, swept by Columbus last year. So, I mean, in the offseason, they realized there was some things missing in their game after that sweep. Obviously, they played Columbus, and Columbus just is a gritty, hardworking, roll 4 lines, check the hell out of you kind of team and rely on their goaltending. And Tampa didn't really have an answer for that last year. They were built on speed and skill up front and didn't have enough jam in their game. It's funny, that's a common thread. Like, you always, in the playoffs, you need the jam. You need the grit. So, I mean, they went out at the deadline and they got Blake Coleman. They gave up quite a bit to get him. I mean, gave up 2 number 1 picks to get Coleman, and then also one for Barclay Goodrow, who was another great guy. And those guys were fantastic for them. They played awesome.
Yeah, and then the Pat Maroon signing in the offseason as well, just back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Pat Maroon now.
I didn't think I'd ever hear that sentence, but good for him. I mean, he deserves it. Obviously,
yeah,
he's a good playoff performer because he always steps his game up in the playoffs.
yeah.
I mean, he's not there to score goals. He's there to check and grind and maybe get a few dirty goals and get under the other team's skin and all that stuff. So good on him.
Yeah, and Julian Breezeball, the GM, deserves a lot of credit. I know that a lot of the talk was that Steve Yzerman put the foundation for this team, and he did with the drafting of well, it wasn't Hedman and Stamkos that were drafted by Yzerman, but the Kucherov and the Point. He was the architect, but Breezeball was the guy that pushed it over the edge because they sort of revamped their blue line this season too. They got Shattenkirk on the 1-year sweetheart deal after the buyout from New York.
Yeah, getting double paid, double dipping.
Yeah, and then Bogosian and Shen, they didn't play like a huge role down the stretch, but they were in the lineup and contributing and playing that hard-nosed game that you need in the playoffs. So, and then you mentioned the 3 forward additions there, so it's well deserved for Julian Breezeball, and he deserves a ton of credit, and so does Yzerman. I mean, it's a shared thing, but he chose to move on to Detroit. So,
yeah, Yzerman. Did he leave last year, in the middle of last year, or after last year?
This past off season, so summer 2019. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's mostly Yzerman's team with a sprinkling of Breezewell on there, but those moves that he made won them Stanley Cup. So you can't deny his take on the team or his shaping of the team because it pushed him over the edge. So yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see what Stevie Y does in Detroit. I have a feeling, it's not going to happen overnight. Probably in the next 4 to 5 years, Detroit's going to be a perennial contender once again.
Yeah,
with
definitely.
the amount of picks and everything that they've accumulated over the last year or so. I think they're in good hands.
Yeah, with his drafting record that he had in Tampa, you just look at that lineup or that Tampa Bay lineup: Killorn, Palat, Vasilevsky, Johnson, just all those guys drafted during the Yzerman regime, and they played such huge roles. I mean, Andre Palat, 7th-round pick back in 2012, and he's one of the top contributors for Tampa. And that they were most
line with Point and Cooch.
Yeah, definitely, and looked very much the part of a top line forward. And that they were deserving because they had 4 legitimate choices for Conn Smythe Trophy. I think they made the right decision in the end with Victor Hedman, the number 1 defenseman. Horse just playing half the game, it seems. Never seems like he leaves the ice. And then he contributed with 10 goals as well.
11.
He ended up with 11. Okay.
Yeah.
11.
That's pretty good for a D-man in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he had one of the most points by a defenseman in NHL playoff history. He's up there anyway. He's not up there with Orr, but he had one of the best offensive postseason runs for a defenseman in NHL history. So shout out to him. But you couldn't go wrong with Point either. I mean, the difference with him in and out of the lineup was, pretty noticeable. So couldn't complain if Point won it. Kucherov was the leading scorer for the whole playoffs, so couldn't complain. You could see if he won it, and then Vasilevsky just an absolute brick wall back there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hedman's deserving, and here's why. Because just with time on ice, he plays half the game every game.
Yeah.
Just because he's out against the other team's best lines. He drives the power play. He drives everything for Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
He's that first pass up ice, and he never makes a mistake, hardly ever, which definitely helps Tampa get out of their zone quite quickly. And the most points in NHL history by a defenseman in the playoffs. That's Conn Smythe right there.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't say Conn Smythe, I don't know what does.
And he's just a huge, he's 6'6", but skates like the wind. He's just impossible to contain.
Yeah.
And easily showing why he's, if not the best, the top 2 defenseman in the NHL right now. And I think he is number 1. If you had to do a defenseman draft right now, I think I'd go number 1.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, just unbelievable. And I believe Tampa was only outchanced at 5-on-5 twice this whole playoffs when he was on the ice. Every
Really?
other, yeah,
The whole playoffs?
yeah.
Holy.
So every other game in the playoffs when he was on the ice, the Lightning just dominated. So very, very deserved. And it was nice to see him and Stamkos have that moment that they can, because they've been together since the beginning. Stamkos went first overall in 2008, and Hedman was second overall in 2009. And yeah, they finally reached the top of the mountain. I know Hedman was a little sad that Stamkos wasn't able to be on the ice as much as he wanted to, but he said he was just a huge mentor and sort of cheerleader, rallying the boys, keeping him positive even though he wasn't on the ice. So yeah, very well deserved, and congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely well deserved. They're going to be in a world of hurt next year, though. They got some cap situations they got to deal with now. They really were. This was their last year in their window.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll retool and they'll be competitive by all means.
Oh, yeah. Vasilevsky's extension kicks in this year, so that's why.
Yeah, exactly. So some of those Killorns, what the hell's that guy's name?
Blatt, Johnson.
Yeah, those guys.
Cernak.
Cernak, thank you.
Yeah.
Those guys may not be back.
Yeah. Very similar to Chicago in 2010.
Yeah.
Bufflin, Ladd, and I think Versteeg all went out the door. So it's going to be.
I mean, the core is there still in Tampa, but there'll be some parts they have to plug in around with a lot less money because Vasilevsky's making a ton of dough now. So.
Yeah. There's even been people suggesting that Stamkos might get traded, but I don't see it. I mean, I get it with the injury history and his big cap hit, but I don't see why you would look to move him first.
If I was an NHL GM, I'd be quite cautious about making an offer for Palat too. Not discounting him as a player at all, but he's had the two best players in the NHL playing beside him for the whole playoffs. So, what is he without those two guys feeding him the puck all the time and driving the play? So, but yeah, no, the times will change in Tampa. Enjoy the Stanley Cup. The Stanley Cup parade was pretty funny out on the water in Florida with the jet skis driving around and all the boats and everything. It was an interesting take on a Stanley Cup parade because usually, when would the Stanley Cup usually be over? Like April-ish?
No, first week of June usually.
June, right? Yeah, okay. So it would be summertime. Never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just interesting to see it in Florida versus something like Minnesota or something like that. I was just looking back at Victor Hedman's draft year in 2009. Man, that was a stacked draft.
Yeah.
So
Tavares went first.
Yeah, number one overall was Tavares, which, I guess definitely at the time for sure he was the number one draft. So Victor Hedman went number 2. Number 3 was Matt Duchene. 4 Evander Kane. 5 Braden Chen. 6 Oliver Ekman-Larsson. 7 Kadri.
Yeah.
And then the list just keeps going on and on. 11 Ryan Ellis. Zach Kassian. They were all part of that draft year, which is crazy. And who did the Flames pick?
Tim Erickson.
Womp womp. Never played a lick in the NHL.
Yeah, turned into Roman Horak, and then turned into nothing after that.
Yeah, Paul Mary was part of that draft too. So crazy draft year, really deep.
I'm not gonna put that on the Flames scouting though, because that's back when GM Daryl Sutter was still in charge. So, and we knew he had the final say with draft picks. So
yeah.
So yeah, but great year, and there was actually some talk. They were talking about Hedman after he won the Conn Smythe, and apparently there were teams back then who had Hedman number 1 over Tavares. So it's interesting to see that they've. I mean, I think at this point you'd rather have Hedman than Tavares, even though Tavares is still a very good player, and number 1 center and all that, but.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I was trying to allude to is I think I'd rather have Hedman than Tavares.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, that's hindsight. It's always fun to go back and pick apart those draft years. But, of course, at the time, Tavares was by far the more known commodity. on that draft year. So
and had exceptional player status and just lit up Oshawa in the OHL. So
yeah. So you understand why they made the pick, that's for sure. So let's move on from the Cup Finals into some off-season talk here.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy week, I tell you.
Oh man, is it ever?
It's just continuing the trend of 2020. I mean, we should be starting the new season right now, but instead we're handing out cups and talking about free agent frenzy. And the NFL draft, we're picking draft picks.
It's so weird because the season technically just ended and the draft is like a week after. And then free agency is like 8 days later, or 8 days past when they hand the cup out. So it's a crazy year. But then I've heard the season's not actually going to start until like January 1st. I think they're still trying to figure out if they can have some fans in the stands.
Yeah.
If I'm sure I've heard expanding the bubble. So not just 2 bubbles, having like maybe 6 or 7 bubbles, that sort of thing.
It's going to be interesting to see what I know Elliot Freeman uses the term path to attendance. So they may not start with fans right away, but they want to have that plan to eventually get fans in the building, because it's different with NHL because it's not open air like the NFL would be. That's why some teams in the NFL are allowing fans
I guess with the open stadiums and stuff. I never thought about that. That's a good point.
Like in Kansas City, I know in week 1, I think they had like 15,000 fans in the stadium, but I think that stadium can hold like 80,000. So so a little different. It
was weird seeing all the fans spaced out. They were all in the lower bowl.
Yeah.
Of course. And then there were just so much space in between them.
Yeah, and the NFL actually feels like it's like the most normal to me. Maybe because there was a little bit of fans, but like I've been watching games for the first 3 weeks here, and I'm like, man, like it's nice to hear fans again. But
they're doing a good job pumping the crowd noise through the TV broadcast. I'm sure it's a little weird in the stadium.
Definitely.
And they're in for a world of hurt because their COVID cases are starting to explode. So who knows if they're going to be able to finish their season.
Yeah.
They got 4 teams under quarantine now. So
yeah, Tennessee Titans had their first was the first team to test positive, and that one got delayed, and now it's spread to some other teams. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, NHL off season. So the draft is coming up on Tuesday this week.
Yeah, round 1 going on Tuesday.
And then free agency starts on Friday. So it could be a very interesting weekend in terms of NHL. Lots of movement. There's a ton of players that are up for contracts in free agency. There's some big names. There's a huge goalie market out there, so you'll see goaltenders swapping all over the place. Now that's slightly smaller now, where we'll dive in. So the Vegas Golden Knights just signed free agent Robin Lehner to a 5-year, $25 million contract, and the Penguins just locked up Tristan Jarry, their backup goalie to Matt Murray at the start of this past year, but definitely played his way into the number 1 role with some of the struggles that Murray had. I'm not sure the term. I think it's 2 or 3 years, and then AAV
3 years at
$3.5 million. Okay, 3 years. So the goalie market got a little bit smaller, but still lots of good goaltenders available out there, and it really signals that Matt Murray is going to be on the move from Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Definitely. And just going back to Lehner, that signing was rumored to be done during the playoff run. And I think Elliot actually said 5 years at $5 million per. So it finally gets pen to paper, and Lehner's found a home, and he was very grateful. I don't know if you saw the tweet that he put out. I won't read it all, but he was just kind of, very thankful because of his past struggles, and now he's, locked down the future. He's hit his big payday, and, he just thanked the Knights for believing in him the way he believes in them. And
guy deserves it. He's been the number 1 goaltender in the last couple of years. So
yeah, definitely. And he put out just a tweet, highlighting the issues that he had, and, he's an open person with bipolar 1, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. So to see him overcome all that and lock in a big payday like that. One of those heartwarming stories you love to see.
Yeah, wow, I did not see that tweet. That's quite the man. That's like no wonder he was struggling in Buffalo and
Yeah.
those earlier jobs that he had. Oh
Mm-hmm.
man, that's a lot to overcome. Wow, that's no kidding. Feel good story of the year right there for sure.
Yeah. I wonder if there'll be a documentary kind of going into the past about what caused all that, whether he wants to do that or not. But I know he was a bit of considered a hothead in Buffalo. You could see he has that look in his eyes when he gets. But nice to see him overcome that. And the Knights had a pretty funny tweet when they re-signed him. They just put 125 panda emojis to to symbolize each one panda for each million that he's earned.
That's funny.
Kung Fu Panda, they call him.
Yeah, Kung Fu Panda. Yeah, that's funny. Speaking of Vegas, did you see their new jersey?
Yeah,
not a fan.
I like the gold, but I don't like the white on the. Like, I don't like how it just like changed spots. Like, I don't mind the gold. I still think their other jerseys are better, but I don't like the white stripe on their sleeves. It looks kind of weird and out of place.
Yeah, it does a little bit. I like their gray jerseys. Those jerseys are awesome. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the new golden ticket Las Vegas third jersey. How the gold is not just like a gold color; it's like a shimmery, shiny gold in typical.
Yeah, it's
Vegas
like a
fashion.
Glittery gold.
Yeah, that's lame. But whatever. I'm sure they'll sell 1 million of them. Yeah. So that's what they're there for. But anyways.
Sorry, I was just going to say, while we're talking about the Knights, I'm just going to mention quickly that with that extension, that probably means the end of Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah, for sure. They can't afford both.
Yeah, so whether that ends in a buyout, because he does have 2 years left at $6 million, I believe, or 7.5, somewhere around there. I doubt it'll be a buyout, and I'm sure they'll look to trade and retain salary.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. It'll be a salary retention on a trade. He's rumored to be going back to Pittsburgh.
That could be. Yeah, I could see that. Place where he knows and he's comfortable, it's kind of unfortunate the way it's unfolded for him, because he was the face of the franchise for the first 3 seasons he was there, but business has been business, and Leonard's been the superior goalie for the past 2 seasons, and was definitely better in a Golden Knights uniform down the stretch here than Fleury was. So can't blame them for going with Leonard over Fleury, even though it kind of sucks in terms of a storyline for Fleury.
Yeah, I mean, as a goaltender, me being a goaltender myself, I never really had to deal with this because we always were short in goaltenders, so I never really had a backup goalie. I always played every game, and we only had one goalie on our team for most of my goaltending stints in minor hockey. But as a goalie, you want to play. So I understand, like, it may suck that he's getting shipped out of Las Vegas, but I'm sure he's kind of happy about it because he'll probably play more wherever he goes, as opposed to being behind Leonard. Like, if you're being behind Leonard, you're sitting for most of the year, right? So
yeah,
definitely. That's not the way you want to end your career. You want to keep playing. So I understand why. I actually understand why Alan Walsh put that stupid thing out. I mean, it was poor timing, of course.
Yeah.
And definitely was a little more graphic than it needed to be.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm sure Fleury wasn't very happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
So even though he denied it. But anyways, yeah, so I suspect he'll be on the move by the end of the week, probably.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of other goalies on the move, Henrik Lundqvist, another unfortunate situation, being bought out by the New York Rangers, but they did it classy. They had I think it was like a series of 5 tweets thanking him and video tribute. And obviously Lundqvist still carrying that $8.5 million cap hit, but being outperformed by 2 young kids in Georgiev and Shesterkin. So they couldn't carry forward with 3 goalies again for 1 more year. So they have bought out Henrik Lundqvist. Looks like he's going to entertain offers, see what's out there. I think Elliot Friedman was talking about maybe the Capitals might look at having him as a backup for Samsonov last year. That would mean him staying on the East Coast, which I'm sure he wouldn't be opposed to. I actually thought Philly might take a look at him, but they just re-signed Brian Elliott to a 1-year deal. So they'll be coming back with Hart and Catahat and Brian Elliott, or Moose as he's known as. So Lundqvist on the market, never thought I'd see that, but 2020, here we are.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of seen it coming. I mean, he's been in the league forever. He's approaching 40. I'm not saying that he still can't make a difference for a team, like in a 1A, 1B tandem, but he's probably wondering, what's next, or if he even wants to go through another bubble season, which I totally understand. So, I mean, his play sort of fell off. He was always still very consistent, but he ran into injury trouble. So he only played 30 games last year, which is definitely not what you want from your number one goalie. And you could just see the trend start to turn the wrong direction. So, and when you have two great young goalies coming up in New York, they had to make the decision. They really didn't have a choice.
Yeah. And they, again, for cap issues too, because they need to re-sign Tony DeAngelo. And so this clears up some space. They traded Mark Stahl for future considerations to clear his money off the books. So a bit of a cap pinch coming in New York. They also need to re-sign Brendan Lemieux. So they needed cap space, and this was the most obvious choice given their situation in goals. So unfortunate, but business is business, as we say. So that's
and when you think about it, Lundqvist doesn't fit in their window anymore. So it's time to move on. They're rebuilding. They're going young. I'm sure they would have loved to trade him and get an asset back for him, but his salary and his deal kind of negated most of that. No one's going to pay $8 million for a 38-year-old goaltender.
Yeah, even if you trade him with 50% retained salary, I mean 4.25. That still might be too much for him. So
when you think Leonard just signed for $5 million, that kind of sets the goalie market right there, right?
Yeah.
So
I assume he'll look for if he does continue to play, which if he hasn't retired yet, it kind of leads me to believe like he's gonna be back for one more season at least. Maybe look for a 1-year deal for a contender and try to win a cup, which would be nice to see him finish off his career. But maybe like a 1-year, $2 million type deal out there. We'll see what happens with Lundqvist.
Pittsburgh, maybe?
Pittsburgh? I mean,
don't know how good a fit that would be, but
we'll see.
So, question for you then. So we have Leonard signing, we have Jari signing. So that kind of sets the goaltender market going forward the next 10 days here.
Yeah.
How do you think that affects Markstrom's talks and contract? I don't think you can ask much more than $5 million if Leonard signs for $5 million. Teams are going to be pushing hard.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because he has had some injury problems too. Not terrible injury problems, but I think maybe because he is going to get to free agency, it looks like, because we're less than a week away, and Vancouver obviously doesn't want to sign him if Demko's there too, because then they're going to have to protect one of them and lose him for nothing. So if he does get to free agency, that means there's going to be a bidding war, which could up his price. I can't see it getting over 6.5, but I think 6, because he has had like a little bit of a longer track record. Whether he's better than Leonard right now, I mean, it's arguable. But he has, over the past 3 or 4 seasons, as opposed to Leonard, where it's been just like the past 2 seasons where he's been elite. So maybe that ups his price a little bit. The term is going to be interesting. I don't think you can go longer than 5 years if that's what Leonard got. But again, if you go to free agency, the teams that are, most often the winners are because they offer that extra year or extra $1 million. So I could see him doing something like a 6x6 in my opinion.
6x6? Yeah, that's a little rich. I don't think he's the same caliber as Leonard. I do think Leonard has proven to be a little bit better. maybe just results wise, but that could be the teams he's playing for too, by all means.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean 6-6 would not be out of the question. I don't think. I think teams would be pushing real hard for 5-5, just like Leonard. So to win it, you might have to go 5-6, or maybe 5.5-5 or something like that. So who knows? Just was curious to get your opinion on that. It's 10:45 here, so let's go. Let's just finish off some of these rumors and signings, and then we'll call it a day here.
Yeah, we'll talk about Pietrangelo real quick. There's been no update in the past week or so about contract talks between him and St. Louis, so it looks like he's going to be headed to market, which I don't understand from a St. Louis perspective why you would trade for Justin Falk and then sign him to a $6.5 million per deal when he hasn't even played a game for you. But then you're going to let your captain and your franchise player walk to free agency when he's, in my opinion, just so much better than Justin Falk. I mean, Falk wasn't overly good for them this year. He had less than 20 points, I believe. And
yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
Don't understand it at all. And then Taylor Hall, some interesting details coming out on him. Chris Johnston on Headlines yesterday said that Hall will be entertaining 1 or 2 year deals, which because Hall has said that he values winning more than anything right now. He's made a decent amount of money. So if he maybe goes to Colorado on a 2 year deal at a high cap hit, I mean, they can afford it for 2 years until McKinnon is up when he doubles his salary from $6 to $14 billion a season.
I don't think McKinnon's going to do that. I think McKinnon has come out and said that he wants to take some money and still win, right? So he'll take a team-friendly deal to make things work in Colorado, which, I mean, that's the kind of player you want on your team. Yeah. It's almost like an unfair advantage for Colorado because he's willing to do that, but he is by far the severely underpaid player in the league right now. When you compare him to like Matthews and Marner both making over $10 million, he should be up in that range. But what's he making, 6?
Yeah, I think it's like between 6 and 6.5, which
gives Colorado so much flexibility. I mean, they got Kadri, who was the other guy they brought over, Burakovsky last year. If they had Taylor Hall in the mix there, holy smokes, they're going to be a powerhouse.
Yeah, and then the other situation where they need to fix is goaltending, because Grubauer is good, but is he good enough to lead them to a cup? That's definitely in question and probably their weakest point, especially if Hall signs. So
there was a few tweets going around with Lundqvist in an Avalanche jersey for a year.
I mean, I can see it. Obviously, Grubauer and Francouz wasn't good enough this year, so and Hutchinson.
No kidding.
But yeah, and then we also have Torrey Krug on here. Looks like he's going to be headed to market. Boston's been looking to trade his rights, which doesn't make sense to me in terms of our next topic because Ekman Larsson's name is out there, and he's apparently given Arizona a 2-team list of where he wants to go. He's already rejected the Oilers and Flames, it sounds like, which is nothing new for us Alberta teams.
Oh, really? He rejected Calgary and Edmonton?
Yeah, because both Ken Holland and Brad Treliving were in talks with Arizona, but Ekman Larsson came back and said Vancouver or Boston is where he wants to go, with Vancouver being his preferred destination. But
how is Vancouver going to make that work? They don't have enough money to go around already.
Yeah, there would have to be salary going back the other way, whether that's Louis Eriksson, Brandon Sutter, or one of their bottom 6 guys like Roussel or Jay Beagle. But from a Boston standpoint, doesn't really make sense to me because Krug and Ekman Larsson, while they're not exactly the same players, they're similar. They're elite power play producers, but at 5-on-5, they're just okay, according to the data over the past couple of years. So I don't know why you would give up assets to bring in a more expensive version of Torrey Krug when you can just sign Torrey Krug. Doesn't really make sense to me, but that Boston values Ekman Larsson very highly, I'm told, or I hear. I'm told by my sources in the NHL.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's they are very similar players. I think Krug's done a little bit more with his career, but he's also been playing for Boston his whole career.
Yeah.
So you got to factor that in, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Being out in the desert, I think Ekman Larsson probably gets looked over a few more times than someone in Boston. I'm curious because right now they can't keep Krug because of their salary cap crunch in Boston. So, I mean, there would have to be some salary going the other way, I guess. Because is Krug still under contract in Boston, or is he a UFA?
He's a UFA now.
He's a UFA, so there's no. Well, I'm just going to quickly pull up Boston's cap room here because for me, Ekman Larsson to the Bruins doesn't make sense money wise at all.
Yeah.
Because Ekman Larsson's on like an 8-year, something like $8 million contract, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 8.25 for I think 6 more seasons. I mean, he is 28, so he's still in the prime, but and maybe it's a certain situation where Ekman Larsson needs a change of scenery, and that'll reignite him. But with what he brings to the table, I just think you could sign Krug for around that same price range and not have to spend assets to get him. I mean, and Krug, he fits in with the team. Whether Krug wants to re-sign, that's another thing. I mean, he looked pretty happy there. I don't know why he wouldn't want to sign long-term there, but it just seems like they're not willing to offer him the big money, which is strange to me considering, Ekman Larsson and him are very similar in my opinion.
Yeah, so just looking, projected cap space, $14 million for Boston as it sits right now. But like you said, they got UFAs with Krug and Chara, so they need somebody on the blue line. So maybe it does make sense for Ekman Larsson. I didn't realize they had that much space. I know they've been talking Tuukka Rask being traded out of there too.
Yeah, his name came recently.
With all that went down, he's making $7 million, so that could open up some space. So they're not as tight as I thought they were. They do have some room. Mm-hmm. They got to sign Jake DeBrusk though. He's an RFA right now, so along with Matt Grzelcyk too on the blue line. So it'd be interesting. Obviously, if they move on from Tuukka Rask, they gotta sign some goaltending stuff here too, and lock up in the crease. But Halak's there for another year at 2.25. So who knows? Maybe it does make sense for why they're pursuing Ekman Larsson. They have a little bit of room. I didn't think they had that much room.
Yeah, it could be a time of transition for Boston. Maybe they won't be as dominant next year as they were this past season. So interesting team to watch over the next couple of years with a lot of their core guys coming up or to the back nine of their careers, like Bergeron, Krejci. Still got some young pieces as well with Pasternak and McAvoy, but interesting team to watch. I want to get to this real quick, and then I think we'll wrap up here. I don't know if you heard this, the rumored deal that was between Calgary and New Jersey this past season at the trade deadline, or not at the trade deadline. It was before Taylor Hall got traded to Arizona. There was rumors of a hockey deal. The details never really came out. But Elliot Friedman on 31 Thoughts this past week sort of laid out the details of what that deal would have been. And the rumor was Sam Bennett and Noah Hanifin were offered to New Jersey in exchange for Taylor Hall and Sami Vatanen, which would have been a huge shakeup in the middle of the season. I think looking back on it, I'm glad that it didn't go down just because of the pandemic hit and then playoffs. Hall, didn't really fit in with Arizona and is headed to free agency, as we know. I'm not as high on Sami Vatanen as I used to be. I think he's regressed a little bit. But yeah, that would have been a huge deal. So what are your thoughts?
I thought Paul Mary was in that as well.
He could have been, but that's what I heard from Elliot Friedman on 31 Thoughts. But I know the Flames probably discussed Paul Mary at one point, and I think they're re-engaging those talks from what I hear. Yeah,
because he's the right wing target they were kind of looking at, right? For help on the right wing.
Guy. So, what do you think of that deal if it went down?
I mean, it definitely would have been a shakeup, that's for sure. But I mean, Noah Hannafin, he hasn't been fantastic for the Flames. It's no secret. He doesn't seem to have that. Yeah, he doesn't seem to have that next gear for some reason. Like he's pretty streaky. He goes on a stretch of 5-10 good games where he's all you notice out there, but then he just disappears for 5-10 games, even longer for most of the season here. But I'm not as high on Vatanen or Vatanen either. I think I'd probably keep Hansen just because he's on a pretty decent deal. He's a young guy. He could potentially morph into a late bloomer, and then you'd hate to get rid of him, especially because he's on a team-friendly deal. And Taylor Hall, I'm not that high on Taylor Hall either, to be honest. I don't think he's really proven that he's a winner in my mind. Now, he hasn't played on stellar teams by any means, but it's now 3 teams where he really hasn't fit very well. So, and it's just too much money. It would have been too much to give up for the uncertainty of Taylor Hall not signing with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Season, right?
Yeah. Obviously. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I probably wouldn't miss Sam Bennett, even though he is a beast in the playoffs. I don't know. I don't think I would have done the deal. They would have had to throw something in there, I think. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion, but I'm sure others feel differently.
Clearly, offensively, Hall would be an upgrade on Bennett, but in terms of the playoff contribution, I mean, Bennett was probably our best, most consistent forward in the playoffs this year. So it's
playoff Sam Bennett is awesome. Regular season Sam Bennett, not so much.
Yeah. So, and I think probably another reason why maybe that one got nixed was maybe Tree Living just thought, well, he's a free agent. Maybe I could, sign him in the off season if they're still interested in that. So why give up these assets right now? And Vatanen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. For me, Vatanen is kind of like a right-handed Eric Gustafsson. Very good on the power play, an elite power play like producer and power play quarterback, but just that 5-on-5 just has to be sheltered and protected.
Not good enough. Said though he's right-handed. The Flames don't have very many of those.
Yeah, they need a right-handed shot. They have Rasmus Anderson, and then obviously TJ Brody's coming up for free agency here, so they need a right-handed defenseman for sure. But yeah, I think that is good for free agency and trade talk. Anything else on your?
No, end? I think that's about just shy of an hour here, which is where we're targeting. We're trying to cut down the length of our podcast and give you a few more. So instead of doing our 2.5, 3 hour rambles like we were doing before, we're trying to cut them down to about just, somewhere around an hour, which is good timing for a lot of folks. So, I think we're done. Next podcast, we'll probably do a little bit of deep dive into what the Flames might need to do in the off season. Kind of, give our grades on, which players should stick around, which players should pack their shit as they play on the radio all the time. And, we'll go from there. And I'm sure there'll be lots of other stories to talk about in the next week here. So it's going to be an interesting time in the NHL. But let's wrap things up and get on our way.
Yeah, just a reminder that Off the Iron is brought to you by Rocky Mountain Barbecue Catering. Visit them at www.rockymountainbarbecue.ca for a free quote for your event needs. Also visit them in-store for lunch, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on weekdays at 5303 68th Avenue, Southeast Calgary. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media pages. Shoot us an email if you want to discuss certain topics. Facebook, Off the Iron Podcast, Twitter, at Off the Iron Pod, Instagram, at Off the Iron Podcast, and also on YouTube, just Google put in the search bar Off the Iron Podcast. You'll see our logo pop up if you want the visual aspect of the podcast. And that pretty much wraps her up.
Right on. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, keep your head up. I know it's some tough times for folks out there, but things are going to get better. So if we're a little minor part of making your day a little bit better by listening to us, we really appreciate all the listeners. And hopefully hopefully we can continue on. It's been weird times, as Adam was saying, but keep your head up. Things are gonna get better.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll cue the music.
Thanks for listening, everyone.